And the UK government has initially it announced mandatory digital ID through something called the Brit card, which sounds very patriotic, until you realise that Brit actually stands for biometric registration, identification and tracking, which they didn't tell the British people. Our government has now announced, in the face of a public backlash, 2/3 of the UK population have reservations about digital ID and don't really want it. They basically said it's no longer mandatory, but you'll have to have it to be able to function in our society moving forward. Our global masters, the self-proclaimed elites, yes, those people who perpetrate horrendous crimes against children, have decided for us that the social model moving forward will be the Chinese social credit scoring system. They cannot sell that to us through the ballot box democratically, so they have to bring it in by subterfuge, and that is exactly what's happening now. Digital ID is a trap, and it's always better to avoid a trap than to try and get out of it once we're in it. If we agree to digital ID, we'll be giving control of almost every aspect of our lives to our governments. We'll not only be giving every aspect of our lives to our governments, but we'll be giving every aspect of our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, and indeed generations of our nations yet unborn. Well, because this digital ID is a one-way street. No government's ever going to give that power up. And to give this much power to any government, you'd have to trust them implicitly. I would ask you, how much do you all trust your governments, particularly in the wake of the pandemic response and the way they treated us?
Examples of how this sort of power has already been abused. Just thinking of Justin Trudeau's ending the peaceful demonstrations by truckers in Ottawa. Their bank accounts were frozen. Their ability to buy food is how they got them. Too few used cash and digital currency. Well, they didn't have CBDCs, so they had to pass laws to do it, and that will be very easy once you have CBDCs. The police froze 206 financial products, including bank and corporate accounts, disclosed 56 entities associated with vehicles, facial recognition, even 253 Bitcoin addresses were identified, and PayPal was also shut down. So that's how they can do it. Now, interestingly, no such financial controls had been used previously to stop criminals. But, of course, peaceful demonstrating citizens, that's when it seems the central planners get pretty creative about how to stop people. And, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. Digital ID suddenly were a topic. Vaccination passports as a backdoor to introduce digital ID. And then, of course, programmability. You can close access if you don't do X, Y, Z, and can be anything the government central planners decide. And now we have the EU commissars already abusing their dictatorial powers that they've had for a while, but now they're showing these powers by declaring very polite, considered critics like Jacques Beau, a Swiss former sort of army officer, in his, just giving his opinions. He's an outlaw now. He's been sanctioned. He can't buy food. He can't leave the country, Belgium, in order to travel back to Switzerland. It is quite extraordinary. Now, on the monetary front, the CBDC is the biggest upheaval in our monetary system in more than 300 years. But the digital aspect is not new. What is happening, therefore, is the centralization, but it's a particular type of centralization. The central banks are ripping up the old agreement between the banks and the central banks, which was that the central banks deal with banks and the banks deal with us. And overall, the banks haven't really abused that. They've never sold our data ever, our transactions data. They haven't. That's really why they've become the enemy, because that's supposed to be a currency that they want to sell and trade. And banks have refused to do that.
Who built the digital ID in the system? This was done by a group called ID 2020. Who are involved with ID 2020. This is the Rockefeller Foundation, Microsoft, Accenture, and so on. The EU played a crucial role for the implementation of the digital ID, and you can see this is a project called Roadmap to the Implementation of the Digital Vaccination Card, which was launched in 2018, so right before the pandemic. You might ask why the EU played such a crucial role. Well, this was because the EU has been taken over by a group of banks and investors based on the Canada-Europe Trade Agreement, CETA, in 2016. It is revealing how the politicians smile, knowing that even more money will flow to the cartel and into their own pockets. What do we know about the cartel? The ID 2020 has been chipping babies in Bangladesh and also in Kenya with a proof of vaccination chip. I consider this an absolute crime against humanity. Chipping Chipping strips persons of their dignity and their human rights. What happens in Africa today is planned to happen all over the world. The fear is that nobody can stop the cartel at this point because they have become too powerful. Our politicians are working for the cartel as their employees. Here you can see that also the EU has done a study in 2017 on the chipping of workers. I think this is a clear example of EU crossing a red line.
So, people will say to you, with regard to digital ID, well, but if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. That is as ludicrous as saying, I don't need freedom of speech because I've got nothing to say. Ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of humanity, say no to digital ID. For the sake of future generations, those future generations who will never know the freedoms that we gave away for them, and it will not happen in my name. Thank you very much for listening to me.
These digital IDs are the enforcement mechanism for 15-minute cities and smart cities. So what's the difference between a 15-minute city and a smart city? 15-minute city or 15-minute ghetto, as MEP Christine Anderson likes to say, is just the idea that everybody should be living in a place where everything you need, where you live, where you work, where you shop, where you go out to the restaurant, where you go out to spend time in nature, it's all within a 15-minute walking distance or biking distance from your home. And the idea is, oh, we're going to help you build community. Okay, well, how do you enforce that? I'll tell you how you enforce it. You enforce it through the use of digital IDs connected to and also on your phone, so they can track you everywhere you go from the phone, but also surveillance cameras on every corner, ring cameras on every door, all of that, so that if you try to go out of your 15-minute radius, they can prevent you. I mean, they can prevent you just by turning off your CBDC. But they can also prevent you through, barriers and barricades and then just stopping you, having police stop you or having drones stop you, I suppose, if you go out of your 15-minute radius. So what does this do? I mean, they are like 15-minute ghettos. They are connected to smart cities because the smart cities are the ones that have all the infrastructure of surveillance, to monitor traffic, they say. But what they're also doing is they are tracking your movements. So that if you become a disfavored person, if you're a dissident, if you're talking like I'm talking right now and the powers that be don't like it, you can't escape.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.